The New York Islanders have made a big coaching change, firing Lane Lambert and hiring the legendary Patrick Roy to take the reins. Was this the right move? And can Patrick Roy turn this Isles team around? We're here with Gil Martin of Locked On Island to talk about it here on the Locked On NHL podcast.
You're Locked On NHL, your daily podcast on the National Hockey League. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Your ears and eyes are not deceiving you. This is the Monday edition of the Locked On NHL podcast. Thanks for making us your first listen every day. You can subscribe to us for free over on YouTube or on the SiriusXM app or anywhere you listen to podcasts to get our latest episode as soon as it's available here on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place a $5 bet. Visit FanDuel.com/locked-on to get started. So, Gil, we, of course, host the Friday show together for the Locked On NHL podcast. And we were talking that we never really talk about the Islanders on this show because you are the host. And I was like, if there's ever any big news you want to talk about, let's switch roles and do it. And I'm sorry to say you have big news in this way, but it seems like it had to happen. What was the final straw for Lane Lambert?
Well, okay. The final straw was losing to the Chicago Blackhawks in a game that they had to win. That they, Chicago not only is in a full rebuild, but like 6 of their top 8 forwards are injured right now and unavailable. But I think in the bigger picture, the last straw was this team just kept making the same mistakes over and over and over again. And no matter what Lane Lambert said to the media or to the team, or what changes he tried to implement in practice, nothing seemed to improve. And I guess if Lane Lambert wasn't the cause of the problem, he didn't have the solution either.
Right. I think that's a key point there, that you could know what's going wrong. And, we've seen this around the league where a coach just can't be that guy to turn things around in the locker room, no matter how hard they're trying. And even if they know what is going wrong there.
Yeah, and for the Islanders, more than anything, it was defensive structure. I think, and that's ironic because under Barry Trotz, they were one of the most defensively oriented team that was trying to win 2-1 and stifle your chances. And, that's why Bissonnette was saying they were so boring and all of that stuff. But ultimately, the failure to get the puck out of your own zone and transition to from defense to offense, and the failure to prevent other teams from entering the Islanders zone with momentum and with speed, that ended up being Lane Lambert's undoing.
Yeah, it's really interesting because I was going to ask directly about Barry Trotz and, that system that he had set up. And we've seen in this season, Lane Lambert opened the team up a little bit to allow for more offense, and they were scoring a ton more goals. They just were allowing more goals because they let that defensive structure lapse a little bit, right?
Yeah, and unfortunately, say what you want about the Barry Trotz style, it played to the team's strengths.
Right.
And it was the best way for them to try to win. So last year, the Islanders were 22nd in the league in goals scored, but 5th in the league in goals against. This year, he opened things up. Lane Lambert did. They're 22nd in goals for still, but they're 23rd in the league in goals against. And that's just not sustainable. They have a negative goal differential. They're losing more games than they're winning if you add, the overtime and shootout losses to losses. They've won 19. They've lost 26. That's not a long-term formula for success.
No, want to turn to Patrick Roy and his new tenure with the New York Islanders. Of course, he is an NHL legend, but also coached the Colorado Avalanche. And I'm just curious, that team, the Avalanche versus what the New York Islanders are so different. Like, why do you think he was the one hired, and do you think it's a good fit?
Well, whether it's a good fit remains to be seen. Look, when you fire a coach, you're always trying to get somebody who is a little bit the opposite of the guy you just let go. Otherwise, why make the change if you're just going to bring in a guy who is similar in personality and strategy? But I think the biggest thing about Wah that made Lou Lamoriello look his way, he won the Memorial Cup last year, and he did it with structure. That was
Right.
the big thing that he did. He gave a junior team better structure than maybe any other junior team had, and as a result, the team goes all the way. I think that had a lot to do with it, that if you're trying to get this team back to defensive structure, Patrick Waugh is a good choice to do that. He also was the general manager of that team in juniors. And maybe, just maybe, this is Lou Lamoriello saying, maybe this is the guy who, when I retire, steps in. I mean, he signed a multi-year deal. This is not an interim coach. So barring another catastrophe, it looks like the plan is to keep Patrick Waugh in the organization for the foreseeable future.
Given the term in the deal and how quickly the hire happened, do you think this has been in the works for a while now?
I do. I think that, the Islanders had a 7-game winless streak earlier in the season. And I think a lot of people were surprised that Lane Lambert wasn't let go then. But I think at that point, it was a very short leash, and going 0-3-1 on this 4-game road trip just sort of, sealed the deal there.
Yeah. Do you see him making any wholesale changes to the lineup or how he does things up front?
Well, that remains to be seen, and it'll be interesting. One thing, though, that to me is possible, it wouldn't surprise me if Patrick Waugh, who knows some of the younger prospects and players in the organization from his time coaching and being a GM in juniors, maybe we see a William Dufour called up. Maybe we see a Ruslan Ishkakov called up. I mean, the Islanders prospect pool is pretty barren, but those are two guys who would be possibilities. And I think we do see some line combination changes and definitely that defensive structure that we talked about before.
Yeah, in the more medium, longer term here, because he is so well known more recently for coaching in juniors, do you think he's going to push Lou Lamoriello to acquire more assets and make more draft picks so he has young prospects to develop?
I hope so. It's something this team has needed to do for quite some time. The fan base has been rightfully frustrated by trading away 4 first-round draft picks in a row. And, to me, it never made sense. If you're going to trade 4 first-round picks in a row, and they weren't all bad deals. I mean, you got Bo Horvat, you got Alexander Romanov, you got Kyle Palmieri. So they weren't necessarily bad deals. But if you're going to trade away 4 straight first-round picks, you can't do it to chase 8th place in the conference. You've got to do that because you're 1 or 2 players away and you're trying to add that final piece. So I think this team, and I've been saying it on Locked On Islanders for a long time, they need to get younger, they need to add speed, and they need to add skill. And hopefully Lou Lamoriello and Patrick Waugh can work together to get some of that accomplished.
Yeah, I would think so. Given the circumstances of how he left Colorado, he certainly wants to get more involved in these sorts of decisions and moves. One other thing that Patrick Roy is known for is an aggressive early goalie pull. Do you see that happening?
Wouldn't surprise me in the least. I guess I'll put it this way. It's not dull. It may be a little crazy sounding, but it's never dull. And, if the Islanders are down 2 or 3 goals with 8 minutes left, would I be shocked to see Ilya Sorokin or Semyon Varlamov, once he's healthy, pulled in a desperation move? No. Let's see how it goes. I mean, that does force your team to play better defensively in a lot of ways because there's nobody back there to stop the puck. So it couldn't hurt, right? I mean,
Yeah, well, Patrick Roy is known for being a little aggressive across the board. We'll see if that continues to be the case for the New York Islanders as their new head coach. Gil, where can people find you and the show?
Well, you can find the show wherever you get podcasts, on YouTube and all the regular audio podcast places. You could find the show on X at Locked On Isles, and you could find me on X at Ice Wars NYR vs NYI.
Thank you so much for indulging this switcheroo, and I'll hand the reins back over to you now.
Thanks, Rachel. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. The NFL regular season is wrapped up. It's playoff time, and there's still time to get in on the action with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place a $5 bet. That's $150 in bonus bets, win or lose. And the app is so easy to use. There's just so many different ways to bet. You can do live, same-game parlays. You can find bets in the new Explore tab, or you can check out the Parlay Hub. That's the best way to find the most popular parlays, and there is so much more. And it's not just the NFL. You have pro and college basketball, and yeah, you could use your knowledge of hockey on FanDuel. Check out the latest odds for your favorite team. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and make your first bet a layup. FanDuel, official partner of the NFL.